The woman's hands were shaking as she placed the old phone on the marble counter, its cracked screen glowing faintly under the harsh lights of the private bank lounge. And when she whispered, "I just want to see my balance," the room went quiet for a split second before the man across from her, a man in a tailored suit worth more than her entire life, let out a laugh so sharp and cruel it cut the silence in half. People turned. The banker raised an eyebrow. And in that moment, before the screen revealed the truth that would change everything, the world decided who it thought she was. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the hidden power inside ordinary people, like this video, comment, share, and subscribe to this channel right now, because stories like this are for people who still believe hearts matter more than money. Her name was Elena Carter, and she had walked 3 miles that morning because the bus fare was needed for groceries. The private bank lobby smelled of fresh coffee and polished stone, a place she never imagined entering, a place that whispered to everyone that they did not belong unless they had already won at life. Elena's shoes were worn thin, the back heel peeling, the laces knotted twice because they no longer held. Her coat had belonged to her mother, and the sleeves were just a little too short. She had practiced what she would say in her head 100 times while waiting in line with trembling knees, repeating the same sentence like a prayer. "I just want to see my balance." The man who laughed was named Richard Halstead, one of the youngest self-made millionaires in the city, a man who had never once been told no by anyone who mattered. He was waiting for his personal advisor, checking his watch, irritated that someone like her was allowed inside the private section at all. When her voice cracked and her phone hovered above the counter, something in him found it amusing, and the laugh slipped out before he could stop himself. Not loud, not cruel on purpose, but loud enough. Cruel enough. Elena's face burned. Years of being invisible rushed back in a single wave. The eviction notices, the job interviews that never called back, the nights eating cereal for dinner so her younger brother could have the only hot meal in the apartment. She had almost turned around. Almost. But she didn't. Because today wasn't about pride. Today was about survival. The banker hesitated, then reached for the phone. Elena slid it forward with both hands as if it were fragile, as if it contained her entire life, because it did. She had not slept the night before. Her stomach still ached from nerves. The numbers on that screen would decide whether she could finally stop choosing between rent and food. Richard glanced over again, smirking, ready to enjoy the moment. The banker tapped the screen, logged in, and then froze. The room didn't change. No sound, no music cue, just the banker's eyes widening slightly, his hand tightening around the phone, his throat clearing twice before he spoke in a voice that had lost its professional calm. He turned the screen toward Elena and toward Richard by accident, and the numbers glowed like fire in the sterile light. The balance was not small, it was not modest, it was enormous, a number that did not belong to someone in worn shoes, a number that could buy houses, futures, safety, time. Richard's smile died where it stood. Elena blinked. Once, twice, the world felt distant, like she was underwater. She had checked that account so many times before, when it showed nothing but a few digits. She had stopped checking, stopped believing. Her hands rose to her mouth. The banker said something about verifying transactions, something about inheritance and interest and frozen assets released overnight, but the words floated around her without meaning. What mattered was the screen. What mattered was that the past she had survived had finally led somewhere. 10 years earlier, Elena's father had disappeared in a storm, a fisherman who never came home. Everyone told her there was nothing left. No insurance, no savings. Just a small sealed account he had once mentioned and never explained. She had tried to access it before, over and over, always blocked, always told the same thing, pending legal process, missing documents, unresolved claims. And then she had given up. Life demanded too much to keep chasing ghosts. Until that morning, when she received an email stating the account had been unlocked. She had borrowed a stranger's phone on the street to log in because hers barely worked. She had seen the balance once, faintly. Then the screen went dark. She had walked to the bank with her heart beating against her ribs the whole way. Richard shifted in his chair, suddenly uncomfortable in a place where he had always been king. The banker excused himself to fetch a manager. People whispered. Elena stood there, shaking, tears gathering in her eyes as the weight of 10 years of hunger, fear, sacrifice, and exhaustion came crashing down. When the manager arrived, the tone changed. Chairs were offered, water, apologies. Elena nodded to everything without hearing it. All she could see was her mother's tired smile, her brother's school shoes with holes, her own reflection in shop windows pretending everything was fine. Richard finally stood, unsure what to do with his hands. He cleared his throat. The woman he had laughed at a minute earlier now owned more than he did. Elena noticed him then, not with anger, not with pride, just with a soft, tired awareness of how the world measured people before it knew them. Her life had not been easy. After her father's disappearance, her mother had worked 2 jobs until her health failed. Elena quit school to help. When her mother died, she raised her brother alone, working cleaning shifts at night, answering phones by day, sleeping in pieces. She had been humiliated by landlords, dismissed by doctors, overlooked by employers, judged by strangers. She had learned to shrink, to apologize for space, to expect nothing. And yet she never became bitter. She believed the world could still surprise you. Now it had. The manager explained the inheritance, offshore holdings finally released after a decade-long dispute, the result of her father's early investments and a trust he had never spoken about. The sum was real. It was hers. The future shifted under her feet. Richard's voice came out low, awkward. He apologized. Not loudly, not proudly. But he meant it. Elena nodded. She did not need revenge. She did not need him to understand. She only needed this moment. She left the bank with a folder in her hands and sunlight in her eyes. The city felt different, louder, sharper, more alive. For the first time in years, her shoulders lowered. Her breath slowed. That night, she went home and cooked dinner with ingredients that were not on sale. She hugged her brother until he laughed. She slept without fear. The days that followed were not about luxury. They were about repair. She paid off the old debts, fixed the leaking roof, took her brother to the dentist, bought her mother a headstone she had never been able to afford. She returned to school quietly, without telling anyone. She volunteered at shelters she once stayed in. She funded scholarships for children who reminded her of herself. And one afternoon, weeks later, she returned to that same bank, not as someone seeking answers, but as someone offering something. Richard was there again, meeting with investors. He saw her from across the room and stood before he even realized he was doing it. Their eyes met. She walked over. This time, she wore clean shoes and a calm smile, but she was the same person. She told him about a foundation she was building, about families trapped in the same place she had been. She asked if he wanted to help, not for the money, for the work. Richard listened, really listened. Something in him shifted that day too. He had built his fortune chasing numbers. She was building hers chasing healing. The project grew. Lives changed. The city felt smaller, kinder, because one woman had refused to become hard when life had tried its best to break her. Years later, Elena stood on a stage at the opening of a community center built on land no one else wanted. She did not speak about money. She spoke about nights when hope felt thin. She spoke about choosing courage when no one was watching. She spoke about believing that your story could turn even when you are tired of believing. And somewhere in the crowd, Richard stood and clapped, not for success but for grace. If this story touched your heart even a little, Please like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to this channel. Your support keeps stories like this alive. And before the ending, comment this word below, hope, if you believe life can still surprise you, because sometimes the moment you think you are invisible is the moment the universe finally sees you, and sometimes all it takes is the courage to say, I just want to see my balance, and stay standing when the world laughs, until the screen changes everything.